Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 2022 Alaska House special election because the Democratic Party just won this race. This was a huge race for the Democrats to win. Again, Democrats haven't won a statewide race in Alaska since 2008, and they haven't held this House seat, I think, since 1972. So, big win for Democrats, big win for Mary Peltola. And in addition to this, the Democratic Party, this is the fifth straight special election they've done well in. They won New York 19, obviously. They overperformed in New York 23. They overperformed in Minnesota 1, and they overperformed in Nebraska 1. So every special election post the Dobbs ruling from the Supreme Court has been very, very good for the Democratic Party. And it's also been momentum changing because back in April or May, I think the Republicans had the momentum, and I was using terms like red wave midterm, Republican leaning environment. But now I think we're in a neutral to Democratic leaning environment, and calling this midterm a red wave may not be necessarily the best way to go about things as of right now. Again, always an asterisk of things changing either direction by November, but as of right now, I don't really see a big red wave coming the way I might have a few months ago. And so this special election is just the latest example of another disappointing Republican performance, because this is Alaska. In 2020, Joe Biden won Alaska, Joe Biden lost Alaska by 10%. Again, he got just under 43% of the vote. Trump just got just under 53% of the vote. It was a solid state for Donald Trump. And again, Biden only really did well, if you take a look at this map, he only really did well with Native American voters up here, as well as some parts of Anchorage and Juneau. He didn't really do particularly well in Fairbanks. He didn't really do too well in the rural, more ex-urban areas. And ultimately, it was just it was a good performance for Joe Biden in Alaska. He outran Hillary Clinton, but he still lost the state by double digits. So it wasn't, great. And now a Democrat just won the special election in Alaska, which is very, very, very big news. It's surprising. I mean, again, my final prediction was Peltola +2 on Twitter. I tweeted out, but then my model had her up by 2. She won by 3, so my model actually did call it right. But I tweeted it out, but even I was pretty skeptical, and my gut was really thinking that Palin was going to pull it out just because Alaska's a red state, just because it's very weird to see Alaska blue on a map. And I just wasn't. I guess I wasn't really prepared for Peltola to actually pull it off and flip the seat to the Democrats. But that's what happened last night. That's what we saw. And ultimately, if you take a look at this election right here, it was originally a 4-way race. It was Peltola, the Democrat, versus Palin, former governor, former vice presidential nominee, Republican. Everyone knows who Sarah Palin is. Nick Begich, the third, who is, again, I believe the nephew of Mark Begich, who was the former senator from Alaska. He was a Democrat. Begich, his nephew's a Republican, obviously. And then Al Gross, originally, who was, again, the Democratic candidate for Senate back in 2020, he also ran, but he dropped out because he wanted to avoid a vote split between him and Peltola that would lock them both out of round 2. And so he dropped out, and he said, I want all the Democrats to consolidate behind Peltola. And that's kind of what happened. Again, Peltola, essentially, I'm assuming every Democrat voted for her. Maybe some voted for Begich because he's more of a moderate Republican. But really, Peltola got nearly every Democrat to vote for her, and she finished in first in the first round. Again, she got about 40% of the vote. Palin got 31%. Begich got just under 28%. And so the remaining two between Palin and Begich was essentially a race of who could do better with the Republican Party's base, and Palin did that, but it was very narrow. She only won. She only finished about 6,000 votes ahead of Nick Begich. And in addition to that, really, her approval rating in this race was only 30 to 35%, depending on the poll. She's unpopular. She's not well liked really anywhere, but especially in Alaska. And so, really, everyone who liked Sarah Palin voted for her, and everyone who didn't like her either voted for Peltola or Begich. And so, Palin narrowly advanced to the second round, and then ranked choice voting came in. Because again, Peltola won the first round, but it was with the plurality. So, since she didn't pass the 50% threshold, ranked choice voting came in. And what we saw was that Peltola, first of all, really what it really came down to here was the Begich voters. Because again, Peltola was ahead, but she needed to get some amount of support from the Begich voters, and she needed some amount of Begich voters to just exhaust their ballots, meaning she needed them to just not pick a second choice between her and Palin. And so what we saw was that Palin only got about, I think, in the 50s, 50, 55%, of Begich voters, and that's why it wasn't even close. Like the expectation was to be really close, maybe only 1,000 votes separating Portola and Palin, no matter who won. She ended up losing by 6,000 votes. It wasn't even that close, and what we saw was that a lot of Begich voters voted for Portola over Palin, and a lot of Begich voters just didn't select anyone because they only wanted Nick Begich, and so that ultimately cost Palin, and was it was just enough for Portola to have a lead, and she got about 51.5% of the vote once they were redistributed. And so that's big news. And now a lot of people are saying, oh, it's a fluke, oh, it doesn't matter, oh, Mary Portola, she's done on arrival in November. And yeah, I don't think she's favored in November. I think it's a lean Republican race. But like, here's the thing, really. Sarah Palin is a bad candidate. She was unpopular. She was doing poorly in the polls. Nick Begich, if it was a one-on-one with Begich versus Portola, Begich probably would have won by, 8-10%. What we saw, though, was that Palin was just so bad that enough Republicans didn't even vote for her or even voted for Portola over her. And I think that this is it's reminiscent of the 2020 or the 2022 candidates Republicans are running. A lot of Republicans are saying, oh, it doesn't matter, we lost Alaska because Palin was just a bad candidate. Who else is a bad candidate? Herschel Walker, Dr. Oz, Blake Masters, Carrie Lake, Tudor Dixon, Doug Mastriano, J.D. Vance. The Republican Party is running a slate of just really unpopular candidates this year. They have some good ones. I think Laxalt's fine. Tim Michaels is fine. Brian Kemp is pretty popular. Joe Lombardo's a good recruit. DeSantis and Rubio are going to win. But mostly their candidates are just not popular. And, they say, oh, Palin's not popular either. Yeah, and she just lost Alaska. And Alaska is 11 points redder than Pennsylvania. It is, oh God, it's 10 points redder than Georgia. It's 10 points redder than Arizona. It's, I think, 13% more red than Michigan. And so if they can even win Alaska, and, I get ranked choice voting makes it, more complicated. But if they, this is supposedly a red wave midterm. But, they should be winning Alaska, right? Even if you throw in ranked choice voting, even if you throw in the fact that Palin was just not popular. But the bottom line is, in the aftermath of Dobbs, enough Republicans, moderate Republicans voted for Nick Begich, were comfortable with voting for a Democrat or just not voting for the Republican. That's a bad sign for Republicans in November. Because again, last time Democrats won a statewide race in Alaska was with Mark Begich in 2008, where he beat Ted Stevens in the Senate race. Again, Stevens was a felon. He was in a lot of trouble, and Begich was able to narrowly pull it out. And yeah, in 2014, Begich did lose re-election to Dan Sullivan, who's now the incumbent senator from Alaska. But again, it was fairly close. And, Begich held a seat for Democrats in the Senate for, 6 years. So it was still quite the performance. And so the fact that, Democrats were able to win this, it's kind of funny because Democrats have been dreaming about winning Alaska for a while. In fact, you go back to the 2020 House race, there was some hype around Elise Galvin. I remember hearing that she had a good chance of winning. She ended up losing by a fairly substantial amount. 2020 Senate race, the whole meme was don't sleep on Al Gross. Even Wikipedia says some pundits consider this race to be a dark horse flip for the Democrats. And really, Dan Sullivan won easily. It wasn't even that close in the end. It's just kind of, funny to me that Democrats have been wanting to win Alaska, every year. They always think, maybe we can win the House, maybe we can win a Senate race, maybe we can win a governor's race. And this year, first time they've won a statewide election in Alaska in 14 years, it's just a random special election. So again, big win for the Democrats, big win for Mary Portola. I hope she serves the people of Alaska well in Congress, because she has a lot of work to do to win her re-election bid in November. She has, if it's Palin, if it's a rematch of her and Palin, it's probably going to be a toss-up. If it's her versus Begich, it goes to likely Republican. But I'll say this is a tough race in November for both parties, and the fact that Republicans can't win Alaska and it's supposed to red wave midterm is not a good look for them. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something. If you did, consider subscribing, consider leaving a like, and thanks so much for your viewership. See you all in the next one.